We went for 2 winters, over 2 winters. We went and spent a week up there at the summit of Mount Washington, and it's a very harsh place. 3 storm tracts come together and they get compressed in the jet stream. It's one of the windiest places on Earth, if not the windiest place on Earth, and the highest recorded wind speeds of over 200 miles an hour, as I recall. It's hard to even walk on that observatory in those type of winds. It's very challenging when you're in a big down jacket. And the other thing that's interesting is you end up getting completely disoriented. You get vertigo when you start when it starts snowing, when there's wind like that, and when there's snow. The winds are so high for the observatory. They have concrete blocks, pavers, big ones that they hold the roof down along with chains. So, and when it really starts getting windy, the whole building rumbles. It's a pretty scary thing. So what we do is we'd set our tents up there, and we'd guy out, put guy lines underneath the concrete blocks. And Easton Aluminum would be there with their computers and stress strain gauges. And we'd have the tent set up there for a whole week, trying to figure out what it's like to set up a tent in very high winds. We set up a tent in 87 mile an hour winds once, and which is very, very challenging. I mean, fabric's flopping around, the poles are getting stressed, and it's very, it's much harder than you think to do. And so we would, and when the winds get over 100 miles an hour, a lot of tents would fail. We'd bring some competitors' tents up there and our own. One of the crew up there at the weather post, they were really disappointed that the mountain hadn't beat our tents apart yet and destroyed our tents. And finally, one day, at like 3 in the morning, he came down and he goes, "Your tents are destroyed, and I'm a happy guy." And it turns out that the guy lines were cut on the concrete pavers, and once the guy lines got cut, then the tent didn't stand a chance. But it was 115 mile an hour winds, so the tents made it like for a whole, like 6 hours, and then once the guy lines got cut, then the tents fell apart. When you're testing up in a mountain like that, you find out very quickly what the weak link is. And you learned definitely what didn't work, and it was probably one of the best environments with which to work on the details of the tent to move the tent design forward. And in tents, we finally figured out that the poles were one of the big weak links, that people weren't using large enough diameter poles. Another thing we learned was the fly attachments. The guy line attachments have to go directly to the poles. The fly attachment to the tent body has to be a certain way, otherwise in the buffeting winds the buckles slip and the webbing slips, and once that happens and there's any slack in the system, the tent fails very, very quickly. You find out what your competitors did right, you figure out what they did wrong, and then you figure out what you did right, and then you come back the next year and you try to improve it.